An economist sees the world basically through a typical microeconomic toolkit that involves things like thinking at the margin, rationality, opportunity cost, trade-offs. Economists, like any other discipline or dogma, has its own jargon and its own rules and its own way of seeing the world. So basically economics, or economists, in general, tend to apply microeconomic concepts like that to explain the way humans behave and to make predictions about the future.
Animators have used the 3D printer to give characters in the new movie Coraline almost 250,000 facial expressions. The machine prints out objects by depositing layers on top of each other. It can reproduce fine detail, as each layer is just 16 micrometers thick. Stop-motion animators made use of it to print a range of heads with different expressions for each character. It's the first time a 3D printer has been used for an animated movie.
Okay, so let's have a quick summary because we've galloped through a bit of philosophy here. I've suggested that we're rationally required to do what morality requires of us, so it's reasonable that tells us what we should and shouldn't do. If we don't do what rationally requires of us, this is because we're ignorant, or, if you don't agree with Aristotle or Socrates, we're possibly weak or corrupt, and we may be ignorant of what morality requires of us because we're relying on others. So what's all this got to do with climate change?
Fungi are an important part of any forest or woodland ecosystem. They are the major agents by which twigs and leaves are broken down, releasing nutrients for reabsorption by plants. And we know fungi also form a constructive partnership with living trees. David Robinson from the Open University's Life Sciences Department explains that although we have known about this partnership and relationship for some time, we are now learning more about the nature of that relationship.
In animals, a movement is coordinated by a cluster of neurons in the spinal cord called the central patterns generator (CPG). This produces signals that drive muscles to contract rhythmically in a way that produces running or walking, depending on the pattern of pulses. A simple signal from the brain instructs the CPG to switch between modes such as going from a standstill to walking.
A nutrition expert at the university for what him unknown say the simple sugar and candy bars can give you a quick boost. But after the initial rush, you usually crush it feel worse than before the snap. They say what you need is complex carbohydrates like a bagel or a bowl of not sugar-coating cereal. Try carrying a variety of pack-size box to work with you and buying a small carton of milk from the vending machine. Carbohydrates help you sustain a blood sugar level that is neither too high nor too low. That means you have a steady flow of energy to finish your day.
To figure out these counterintuitive findings, the researchers conducted an experiment in a hotel room. They rounded up some lizards, gave them a perch, and then used a leaf blower to mimic the effects of high winds. They set up a net to catch any lizards that lost their grip. As the artificial wind blew, the lizards moved so the perch took most of the airflow. But their hind legs would stick out, and if those rear limbs stuck out too far, they acted as sails.
Eventually, those back legs were blown off the perch, and the lizards were just holding on with their front two legs. And they could only hold on like that for so long as the wind speeds increased further and further until eventually they were blown off the perch and into the nets.
So shorter back legs gave a survival advantage, a trait that might be passed on to the next lizard generation.
No one likes to be spied upon, to have their personal information stolen, or their computers hijacked to become part of what's called a botnet. Botnets are networks of computers that have been infected by viruses called malware. It could happen to you. These hijacked computers are being secretly used without the owner's permission, for criminal and espionage purposes. Botnets are one of the biggest problems in computer security today. One of the scariest examples of computer hacking, as we mentioned, is what's called the GhostNet system, the hijacking of computer networks in the offices of the Dalai Lama and thousands of other computers around the world. There are some 250 million cars in America, 250 million cars in the country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there is good news, according to our guests today. And that is we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels and digital technology. And they already exist. So what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guests today will help answer that.
I'm a big fan of gap years. I took one myself, so I'm probably biased. I think that if you've got something you want to do in the year before you come to university, that you should do it, and a lot of students who want to study a biology degree actually want to go off and travel and perhaps work on a conservation project, and of course that's all very good. It will contribute towards your degree and your preparation for that, and then when you come to us you'll be ready for your studies. So if there's something you really want to do, then my advice is to go for it.
One of the things that people have said about agriculture is that on the whole, it is more labor-intensive than hunting and gathering, and that's one of the reasons why people have looked to explanations which, you might say, are kind of coercive factors, that people have been forced into agriculture because they had no alternative. That is ultimately what may happen. But at the very beginning, it could be that agriculture was developed because people wanted special status foods for feasting, that it was actually a social need. I mean, how much of what we do in our lives is generated by competition with others? And a lot of that is powered by the desire for new things, new statuses, new whatever it might be. Respect and recognition also are important. And in small-scale societies, a lot of those sorts of factors are generated by the ability to, for instance, throw feasts. One possibility is that some of these foods that were being grown were actually intended especially as feasting foods.
Another installment of our weekly Brief but Spectacular. The Hospitality House has been offering support to homeless and poor residents of San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood since 1967. Its executive director, Joe Wilson, has been affiliated with the organization for more than 35 years and is uniquely qualified for the job.
I have literally slept in gutters at night. I've gone to sleep at night on the street, in some cases hoping that morning would not come. The coldness, the starkness, the inhumanity of being on the street with nothing, without the security that four walls can bring, is a very debilitating experience.
Many different types of barcode scanning machines exist, but they all work on the same fundamental principles. They all use the intensity of light reflected from a series of black and white stripes to tell the computer what code it is to see. White stripes reflect light very well, while black stripes reflect hardly any lights at all. The barcode scanners shine light sequentially across the barcode, simultaneously detecting and recording a pattern of reflected and non-reflected light. The scanner then translates this pattern into an electrical signal that the computer can understand. All scanners must include computer software to interpret the barcode once it has been entered. This simple principle has transformed the way we are able to manipulate data and the way in which many businesses handled record keeping.
In that month or 6 weeks, the patient may feel perfectly well. He may even travel around the world spending hours packed into crowded airplanes with unsuspecting fellow passengers. That's bad enough with regular TB or with strains that are resistant to 2 or 3 mainline drugs used to treat the disease. But it's a potential public health catastrophe with the new strain called XDR-TB for extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis. The strain is impervious to a wide array of first and second line drugs. That's why 30% or more of its victims die. And that's why people like Lawrence Gostin are rethinking what public health authorities should do about people with suspected XDR-TB in the weeks before the diagnosis is in.
Scientists filming in one of the world's deepest ocean trenches have found groups of highly sociable snailfish swarming out of their bait nearly 5 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. This is the first time cameras have been sent to this depth. Although some species of snailfish live in the shallow water, the Hadal snailfish are found exclusively below 6,000 meters. Here they have to contend with total darkness near freezing temperatures and immense water pressure, equivalent to 1,600 elephants standing on the roof of a mini car. They feed on thousands of tiny shrimp-like creatures that scavenge the carcasses of dead fish reaching the ocean floor.
As far as getting acquired, we're trying to focus on the product. I think that if you know a lot of companies are built to be acquired, and I think what happens there is you leave yourself in a really vulnerable spot because you're growing and you say, hey, I won't hire that expensive VP of whatever because hey, man, any day now we're going to get acquired. And then you're acquired. And then your product winds up suffering. So I think you need to really want to do the company. Because you don't know how long you're going to be at it, and luckily I'd been searched for a long time. I know to want to stay in search. So you know it's fine with me whatever happens with the company, but you have to focus on building the product to making the product better, and you focus on building a sustainable company.